Hello, it's Peter Wright and Kathleen Beauvais with Health Declassified, and we have another really excellent guest. But I got to ask you a question. Do you know how much damage heavy metal toxins might be doing to you? You're going to find out when you listen to this episode. But first, let's greet co-host. Hi, Kathleen. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Peter. Thank you so much. And, Peter, we have the opportunity on this show to interview such amazing experts that just want the best for people and people's health. And today, our guest is at the pinnacle of those experts. So we'd like to welcome to the show Eddie Stone. Hello, Eddie. How are you?
Kathleen, I'm great. Peter, nice to be able to talk to both of you. It's an honor to speak to your audience and share with them what we know and maybe give them some ideas, some of these invisible killers out there that we should pay more attention to than we do.
Absolutely. Now, Eddie is the founder and CEO of Touchstone Essentials. This is a company that provides supplements to help people detoxify from various toxins using the purest, cleanest, and natural ingredients available. So, Eddie, let's just jump in. Can you tell us, you claim that your products can detoxify people better than the competition. Why is that?
Well, there's quite a few reasons, but first, let's just talk about sort of the base materials that we work with. And one of the things that we think it's important is to recognize the body's ability to detox on its own. And so our products are really here to support those processes, because in a world where there's 100,000+ manufactured chemicals and toxins out there that are utilized in the production of consumer goods, all the way from your carpet, which isn't really natural, anything that won't stain or things like that is not going to be natural, to flame retardant material. And listen, I don't want my airplane seat to burn either. However, all of these things are toxins that are just a part of life, or even the toxins that are associated with the growing of food, right? And we understand why we have herbicides, fungicides, pesticides, things of this nature. But very often the chemicals created to kill off those pests that you find in those environments can have detrimental impact on us. I mean, you don't have to go back far into history to see where things once approved no longer are approved as products used in agriculture. Yet the challenge remains, there's really no work that's done on the front side of decisions to use certain chemicals to see if they're worthwhile. And so what we've found over time, and what the scientific and medical community will affirm, is that there's a sort of a body burden, a toxic burden that's just out there. And I think for people, there's a little bit of a naiveness about it, because if I can't see it and I can't smell it, so they tend to think, well, I'll have a noxious smell or an acrid smell that's associated with toxins, or I live in a city where I can see the air. That one's kind of obvious that they're immune to these challenges. That's really not true. I mean, very often some of the more pronounced challenges exist in rural areas where chemicals are sprayed on crops or applied in some form or fashion. And so they're making their way into the air supply, water, soil. They're impacting the farmer, the farmer's kids, the people that work on the farm, the community the farmer lives in. And so there's toxins there that are having an impact on our health that just, they're kind of unseen.
Absolutely.
And so maybe to your question, because I don't think I fully answered it there, the reason we think what we're doing is better, there's really several parts to this, right?
Okay.
But one of it is we're working with natural products such as zeolite, which I believe we're going to spend some time talking about, where we source it. We source ours here in the United States. When we source it immediately out of the ground, it's already Prop 65 compliant, which is a very stringent set of rules associated with identifying something as having toxic capacities or carcinogenic capacities. And so we know it's clean. But then we have a proprietary process where, in this case, we prepare that zeolite to make it more bioavailable. Really critical, right? I can buy on an auction site such as eBay or others bags of zeolite, but if no one's ever prepared it, its impact on the body is very minimum. So it's a lot about sourcing, whether we're talking about zeolite or the materials or ingredients that go into our food products, right? We know that deep green leafy vegetables, specifically, I can't say that, cruciferous vegetables, can aid in one of the body's detox mechanisms through your kidney, liver, even the lymphatic system, right? Where did those come from? Are they cold processed? Are they clean from the beginning? Are they organic certified? So there's a lot of dynamics to take something we know a little bit about, but put it in a usable form that's convenient, affordable, but it's best of its best in terms of supporting the body.
Right.
Okay. So I was going to ask you how you know that people are carrying a burden of toxins, but you've already explained that well, or where it comes from. Tell us how zeolite works. Is it something like activated charcoal for removing poisons from the system?
Well, charcoal, and think of charcoal very often just like a filter, right? Because that's what it's mostly used for in terms of things of this nature, right? And so you've got GAC, granulated activated charcoal, that's a part of many types of water filtration systems. And so they're like a sieve, right? Things go in and they're stopped and they're captured inside the charcoal. So there's an effectiveness there, but not a lot of discernment and limited in terms of how it can work in the human body, because in this case, we can't filter before it enters.
Okay.
And eventually that is going to be exited through the body through its waste system. A zeolite works entirely differently. Number one, we use a sheet-like zeolite that is a natural zeolite that we mine, as I mentioned before. In this case, most sort of modern governments recognized decades ago that it was safe to use and use in consumer products. So it has GRAS status from the FDA and a similar type of thing with our Canadian neighbors. And so we know a lot about it. We know that it has no contraindications, which is important. That being said, if you have a special medical condition, always speak to a physician first, right? Just safety first is our approach. But zeolites, they're a crystal that forms when Playa Lake or salt water collides with lava or lava ash. This crystal forms.
Okay.
It's been going on for thousands and thousands, thousands upon thousands of years, right? And these crystalline structures grow, and they have an interesting quality that they have a native negative charge, meaning as it grows, it creates this negative charge, and its structure is consistent throughout. So it's not like the structure of something where it's a little different on the outside than the inside. In this case, all the way through. So when you mill it down and get it down to its individual or very, very small components, in our case, we have one for the gut and one for the cell. The cell one's a nano-sized product. The gut, I think, is about 0.5 microns in median size. And so it maintains this similar quality. And so in this cage is a negative charge. That is important because most of the heavy metals and many of the toxins, volatile organics, and others we talk about, they have a positive charge.
Right.
Literally based upon proximity, as it comes near one another, almost like the north end and the south end of a magnet, it's going to bind together.
Yeah.
And because zeolites are not essential minerals, they don't hold in the body. And so it's a really elegant, simple way for a person to detox. And it's going to process out of your system and assuming sort of normal renal and bowel function in a 4 to 6 hour period of time. So it's very discerning in the things that it goes after. That's not like charcoal, which generally would be based upon size, right? And so smaller the sieve, but there's other challenges. So clay, charcoal can have benefits. Even herbal cleanses, not detoxes, can tease out from soft tissue, fat, things like this, certain toxins. But there's really nothing, at least that I'm aware of, and I've been involved in this specific area for well over 20 years with supplements, well over 30 years, that can function so specifically, particularly for heavy metals, environmental pollutants, the things that we know are the most noxious for the system, most disruptive from a hormonal standpoint, most destructive from a central nervous system standpoint, even can become obesogens. And so for us, we've just never seen anything in the literature or otherwise that performs like a properly prepared zeolite.
And
Wow,
I'm
that's
curious,
amazing.
Eddie, has anyone experienced a healing crisis by taking zeolite?
I'm sure there is somebody out there, and surely as I say this, right, we'll find a couple different edge cases. But for the most part, and we've sold millions of bottles, and we sell in some 50 countries. So our sample size here is pretty large. You just don't hear these sort of Hertzheimer type of reactions that you hear described. we'll have someone on occasion say they receive some muscle cramping. And
Okay.
invariably, they're just really not hydrating. It's just kind of that simple because it won't bind with electrolytes. That's sort of not its function. So there's no evidence to support that. And we'll have somebody on occasion say, I've got a little bit of a tension headache. Again, probably goes back to water. So we do try to encourage people, even outside of this environment, to drink plenty of good, clean water just to support their health, right? That's the thing to do, right? As Peter's doing. And so you just don't hear that. That's not to say it's a zero sum, but there's not enough to talk about that zeolites carry contraindications. And so for us, as a product that we work with, even from our greens drink, which every now and then someone got a challenge with spinach or kale or whatever it happens to be, we just don't hear that with zeolites. So we have a lot of confidence. Of course, everything comes with a guarantee. If they're dissatisfied or have an unhappy experience, stop, return it. We give your money back, but that isn't a common refrain.
Okay.
Interesting. And can you tell us a little bit about the testing that goes along with these products?
Yeah, so we think that's really important. I began my career, I just turned 62. So, I mean, I've been almost half of my adult life, right? I've been involved with supplements. And the origins of Touchstone Essentials, the company I founded in 2012 that we're discussing, really comes from the fact that early in my career, being involved in supplements and supplement sales, I got to see sort of behind the curtain about manufacturing, going to places where raw material was produced, not just places where products were assembled. And it's interesting, I really believe in supplements. I think there's a gap supplements can bridge between where a person's habits are and where they want to be. But at the same time, the more aware I became of supplements and how they're made, frankly, the more concerned I became. A lot of supplements, when I say a lot, I mean 99+%, if a consumer really saw what was being produced, it's either made from fractionated petrochemicals, oils, or fractionations of oil or byproducts coming from fruits or vegetables. You see a bottle, it's got strawberries and blueberries and things on it, but what you're taking does not have anything in common with a strawberry or a blueberry. And the way the wording works and the legality of nutritional labels, for example, I can refer to vitamin C, put in parentheses ascorbic acid, and communicate to the public in a general way, hey, this is vitamin C. That's not really accurate. Vitamin C is an 8-part molecule of which ascorbic acid is just one part. It's the outer shell, almost like the eggshell is to the egg. And so when we started looking deeply into this, we realized, man, there's got to be another way. And so we made a concerted effort to look for opportunities to produce whole food made supplements. So whole food extracts, whole food materials, which quite literally could be an entire blueberry or all of its constituents, because we believe there's a synergy there. Most people don't realize that. Let's take something like an apple. I think there's identified between 700 and 900 chemicals that make up an apple.
Wow.
That's actually a pretty low number relative to other fruits and vegetables. Which parts of those things are really important to get the synergistic effect of eating an apple? Because if I just juice it, really all I'm going to do is raise my blood sugar. Right? That's what apple juice really turns out to be. If I want, though, to enjoy an apple, all of the nutrients associated there, I really need to eat the whole apple, because to offset the sugar from the apple, that's why you've got fibers and pectins in the apple, which would mitigate this jump in glucose, right, which can obviously be negative. So, for us, that's part of what we do to begin with. Our sourcing, how we manufacture, we do cold manufacturing with, if at all possible, which means we never let it give above 116 degrees Fahrenheit because things denature at that point. And we'll test beforehand. So we really offer certified organic products, USD organic or Oregon Tilth, or different organizations. We use an organization called QAI, which is a large billion-dollar global organization that works with companies like ours to do a level of verification associated with claims from manufacturers, claims from suppliers, so that you can ID in your supply chain what you intend to buy is what you wound up with. This is a real challenge. If you don't really verify sourcing, unfortunately, along the way, what you think you purchased and what you wind up with is quite different.
Quite
And
different, right?
so we have all these things. We have standard certificates that are associated with letting us know about heavy metals, other environmental pollutants that quite possibly could be there. And so if people look on the website, they can learn more about that. With our zeolite, we test that when it comes out of the ground raw. We test that when it's out of the ground after we've gone through our processing, because our families use this too. I mean, this company's really, the company existence was really a response I had from friends and family, including my wife and my children, wanting to follow the advice or the recommendations that I had. And I reached the point where even in the past, some things I was selling, I just couldn't suggest to use and continue to sell them. And so we thought there can be a better way. And I got to tell you, when we started, we thought, well, this will be a boutique business, because how many people are that concerned? Over the years, it turns out millions of people. We operate in some 50 countries. It's a really large enterprise. And I'd like to think we've played a role along with other things like Fast Food Nation, farm to table type stuff, where people are like, hey, it's wise to be a little more discerning about the food I'm buying, what I'm putting in my body. There's a great book by Michael Pollan called Omnivore's Dilemma that follows food from farm to the table. Tremendous education, so that we're not just having something pass through a drive-through without really asking any questions of it, other than the simple satisfactions.
The
Okay.
absorbability of supplements is something that I'm so glad that you touched on, because there was a study done several years ago here in where we live. And Peter, I don't know if you've heard about this one, but they did a study of the sewage systems, and
No.
and how many supplements they found in the sewage systems, which means
Really?
only one thing, right? It's
Yeah.
just going right through people. It's not
Sure.
being absorbed. It's not doing a bit of good, right?
Yeah.
Which is, and how much money are people
That's right.
spending trying to do better for themselves by thinking they're going to take a healthy supplement to help themselves, and it just goes right through. Anyways, I just
Yeah.
wanted to bring that up, Peter.
But
Interesting
that's
one.
all about being conscious of that, right? Because you'll
Yeah.
find that everything we do has enzymes. There's enzymes natively there because of cold processing, but we've added enzymes where that's needed, or or prebiotics, because if you're not really trying to think about how it's going to break down in the gut, then what good, or even the bowel, upper and lower intestine, some things are going to absorb there, but really what good are you doing,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And so binders associated with most tablets, for example, just difficult for the body to break down.
Yeah.
And so then we've sort of lost touch with what we're trying to accomplish here, was help a person bridge that gap between what they're eating and what they want to do nutritionally.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to come back to one of your other products in a moment, but something that worries me when I talk to people like you on the nutritional side and natural medicine is, do you get any pushback from pharmaceutical companies? Because you're trying to keep people healthy and keep them off prescription drugs. So do you get pushback from that?
Yeah, there's no question, in an indirect way, we're affected by big pharma, but even big pharma and big food. That might be more
Yeah.
the dynamic. The reason fractionated ingredients can be labeled as a vitamin is really goes back to big food and what their demands are to put it in their products. And really where this all starts, you can go back, I think it's 1870 here in the United States, when they were milling wheat and taking out wheat germ so that flour could last longer on a shelf. So if you take the fat out of flour, then its ability to stay shelf stable and safe is really longer. And if you don't do that, then flour doesn't last very long. And so those, particularly in a poorer community, right, just don't have that ability to keep flour in their household in an affordable way. And so manufacturers realized, hey, let's just get rid of the wheat germ. Problem is, that's where all the B vitamins are. And so rickets became a real problem in the economically depressed areas of the US. And I'm sure this same thing was playing out in Canada and other parts of the world. And so the solution was, let's add it back. But they added it back in a chemical form that in no way, shape, form, or fashion resembles food, right? So you have to further up the dose. And so this is really where this fractionated chemical identification as a supplement started from. And really the supplement industry just grew out of there, mostly with materials being cast off by big food.
By big food,
And
right?
one more way to use all the remaining material of the vitamin E that we used or whatever happens to be. And so labeling laws, which mean in most cases you can buy your raw materials abroad, assemble it in the US, I think it's true in Canada as well, and call it made in America
Yeah,
or
that's
made
right.
in Canada. And
Same
so
here.
there's a romantic notion that, oh, this was all farmed here. And of course, there's probably no farming in most of those products. And so we're impacted by all of these conglomerates because truthfully, when you think about broccoli or vegetables or fruits, they don't have a lobby. There's no
No,
lobby. There's no broccoli lobby. I mean, there might
no,
be a modest one, but it's nothing like the big food and big agro looking for supplements and things like that. And then big pharma, where they really put their boot on the neck of people involved in our industry, is they have a wonderful relationship with the FTC and the FDA, and that's the governing bodies in the states. Well,
hmm
I appreciate both the FDA and the FTC because of the work they do to prevent charlatans, people making claims, wild claims. Consumers can be vulnerable to sort of buy products, but at the same time, they apply standards very often to supplements that they're applying to pharmaceutical companies and clinical products or narcotics. And I think this is where we get a disconnect when we're looking particularly at food products. And so
right.
this is where our interests collide. But I've just learned to see that collision and stay focused on speaking to my consumers. But I'm not going to try to battle that.
Right.
Sure, sure, sure. Oh, good one.
So
There's a case in, sorry, Kathleen,
go
you
ahead.
just reminded me that at the early stage of my career, before I went farming, I worked in the sugar industry, and they take molasses out of cane sugar to make white refined sugar, and then sell molasses as a healthy product, right?
Right? They do.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
sugar industry is a whole nother discussion because we could talk about the forced labor and other things involved in its production, whether that's sugar coming from cane, beets, whatever happens to be. It's probably not the nature of this show, but we could definitely have a whole discussion about farming,
Right.
Yep.
And it's all in the marketing, right? It's all in the marketing.
all in the marketing. You get tomatoes out of Florida in the US that, number one, tomatoes should not really be grown in a humid part of the country like that. So in our Midwest, Indiana, prime example, Illinois are pretty good places to grow tomatoes because they need a cooler evening. You
hmm
can create a lot of problems on the bottom side of a tomato if the soil remains too hot and too humid during the evening hours. And so certain plants should grow in certain regions. There's certain dynamics involved, but in Florida, they've got plenty of land to do it and they can grow year round. And so they grow these really hard tomatoes and they remain green for a very long time. If you have one fall out of the back of a pickup truck or a semi or something going up the highway, its bounce is somewhat like a tennis ball until it becomes gassed. But then as they get to the grocery, right, they gas them so they turn pretty red or whatever it happens to be. And so on the surface, right, and here's my worry. I think a lot of consumers actually think that's what a tomato should taste like.
Yeah.
Boy, if you grow up around homegrown tomatoes or heirloom type tomatoes, you say, oh my gosh, this is why it's actually a fruit and not a vegetable. I can see this difference. And so yeah, we should find other things because we could go a long ways down this path.
Yes, absolutely. But you're absolutely right, Eddie. So I'm curious, what has been the feedback from people that have taken your products?
I'll tell you, it's really it's it's gratifying and it's really the energy that goes up behind the company. I think we've got 60 plus thousand 5-star reviews, but those
Oh,
oftentimes don't just tell the story. The stories are really those personal emails
hmm
or letters, or every now and then we'll have occasions to meet some of our consumers. This past weekend, I was at a kind of an educational event in Charleston, South Carolina, that was focused on a lot of our products. And I met consumers. I met consumers from the UK. I met consumers from Norway. I mean, I met a lot of people in the US as well, and some from Canada, in just their personal stories, right, about what's happening with them. And just to be clear with your listeners, I would never try to suggest that our supplements, and no supplement should, is going to cure, treat, or mitigate disease. They're not drugs.
Right.
What they are tools to support you on this health journey that's really about putting the body in the best position to defend itself. The human body is a level of genius that's difficult to describe. And man can work for a long time and can have AI for a long time. They're never recreating the human being, right? And all that goes into that. But oftentimes the world we live in and our lifestyles really don't support the body's natural abilities. For example, we eat so much ultra processed food in Western countries, right? I think some estimates are that it's greater than 90% of the calories people are consuming, which is just so difficult to imagine. But when you consider how calorically rich ultra processed foods are, and I'm talking macro counts, right, of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, and really it's all manufactured. So the amount of nutrients in it's always just generally what's been added back in fractionated pieces. It's sort of no wonder that we've got the obesity epidemics and other things that we deal with. And so when you look at that and you start to replace, right, give people good nutrition, this is where these stories really come from, because you all of a sudden you got the body back on track. You gave it something to work with. And that's really where our success comes from, because your immune system is incredibly robust. Just get out of its way. The central nervous system is incredibly effective. Just get the heck out of its way. And that's why taking away toxins, detoxing, getting rid of the bad stuff, putting some good stuff back in, you're just going to give yourself a better chance to get a good night's rest. Guess what? Next day, you got more energy, a little less brain fog and fatigue.
Oh, yeah.
And you start to detoxify from heavy metals and things that are hormonally disruptive. All of a sudden, my metabolism works. And it hasn't worked in years. And so that's really the dynamic at play.
Wow. So, Eddie, there's more to living a long, healthy life and happy life than just detoxifying. So tell us about your anti-aging products. You've got TeleVital, one in particular that I think is a revolutionary type product. Tell our audience a little about that.
Yeah, and I'm really happy to do that. We work closely with Dr. Bill Andrews. I think you guys may have met Dr. Andrews before. Incredible story. Easily the brightest person I've ever worked with. And I've been blessed to be around some really, really bright people with a very singular focus to cure aging. He sees it as a disease, which I think is great. I want somebody that smart on the job. And so what we recognize, just to kind of simplify it as much as possible for people, your lifestyle impacts your longevity, right? Choose to smoke, not smoke, control my weight, movement, quality of what I eat, managing stress. And I think most people, we gave them like a quiz, they'd be spot on with the answers, right? They'd know all of these things. But there's a limit to that. I can live a perfect life from a health standpoint, but I probably can only make it to 120, maybe 125. That's just the laws that are sort of governing the internal organs and how you exist. Where this comes from is your cells and the turnover rate on your cells. And most people know the software, so to speak, that controls cell replication is your DNA. And the DNA, every time it turns over, needs to be protected. And we have a natural ability to do that with something called a telomere. But a telomere has a finite length. And every time it turns over, it shortens. And so if we can do something to protect that telomere, its integrity, now we have the ability to push the envelope of age further out. The body makes something called telomerase, a natural enzyme that can help to protect and stabilize that telomere. Challenge is we really stopped making it after birth. Bill, through his work, and I don't know if he shared much about this, but I think there's some 30,000 substances tested, really got it down to about a half dozen things from the natural world that would stimulate the production. I think the proper term is a telomerase inducer, the production of telomerase that kind of gives you a fighting chance from that standpoint. And so while we're probably decades away from interventions that would actually lengthen in a material way your telomere, we do know that we have something that can affect its quality so that we can get more living out of the years we have. Modern society has helped to prolong life with all kinds of procedures and drugs. But man, if you can't really live life, you're just being held alive with duct tape, so to speak. I don't know if that's what we want.
No.
And so we're excited about that because, and I don't mean this in a boastful way. There's no one with a product like this in the marketplace today. There's not a pharmaceutical. There's not a gene splicing material. This is the only product of this level of potency, really reflecting Dr. Andrews' work on a global scale, and it's incredibly affordable. And so it's really for those that are serious, and don't just think about being old when you want it. Every year this has been introduced to you, it's sort of like compounding interest. Your benefits grow.
Mhm.
I wished I'd have known about this when I was 18.
Mm,
You know, when you're 18, you're not thinking about these things. You're going to live
right.
forever no matter what.
Mhm.
And so sometimes people think, well, I need to be in my 60s or my 70s. Oh, absolutely not true. If you care about the quality of your health and vanity, right, attention of the skin and some of these things, this is something as early as possible you need to think about.
Wow. And just for to let our audience know, if you didn't see it, Dr. Bill Andrews' episode was aired 2 weeks ago, published 2 weeks ago, and he impressed me. I've been a marathon and ultra marathon runner for part of my life, and Dr. Bill, I think, is 71 years old, and he was training for another 100-mile ultra marathon at 71, and holds a world record, or did hold a world record for the most ultra marathons run in 1 year of any age group, right? Incredible. So
Mhm.
that's a good one for you to watch. Kathleen, back to you.
Well, we are running
Yeah.
short on time, but we do want to ask you one other question. For someone on a limited budget, what is the first of your products that they should consider starting?
Boy, and I do appreciate that, right? Feels like the economy for the last year has been tough, no
Mhm.
matter where you live. And I
Hmm.
don't need, and no matter what the economy is, we all got to think about money. And so I would think about what are your priorities and what is it right now that would benefit you the most? Do you feel like you've been in an environment where toxins are a real concern?
Mhm.
Either because where you live, the symptoms and things that you have, right? Are you dealing with a level of brain fatigue that does not seem right for who you are? Are you living with struggles with your weight that don't make sense? Maybe you do pretty good with your diet, you do pretty good with movement, but yet you're just struggling with it. Are there real issues with your sleep?
Mhm.
Which sleep is this whole thing of importance in terms of health and well-being. So, if these are the kind of things that just commonly, right, you're not sickly, but there's just a little something that's not right, I'd consider the detox products. We have a detox pack. It could be a combination of what's happening in your gut at a cellular level. There's combination packs that we have. You may even need minerals. We have a Fulvix mineral product that is just unbelievable. And so maybe getting the bad stuff out and kind of minerally supporting your body, maybe that's the first place to start.
Mhm.
And then it might be important for you to consider nutritional supplementation, right? How good is your diet? So it's about considering your priorities. And of course, if aging, longevity, quality of the life as you get older is important, there's nothing better than televital. So I don't try to tell a person, I just ask them to take just a moment and sort of reflect on their situation. The other thing I'll add is I want people to make a budget for this. If not our product, find something good, because investing in your health, I mean, people just forget you got one body, you get one
Hmm.
shot at this thing. And you can find plenty of people in your life you can go talk to that didn't nurture their body, didn't take care of their body, and now they're paying a price. And unfortunately, you can carry that idea so far, you can't come back from it.
Yeah.
And so I just say, hey, it's just this one chance you got at this body. Man, I really want you to do the best you can.
Good
Excellent.
advice. Yeah,
Absolutely.
excellent.
So, Eddie, how do people contact you? Where can they go to get your products? And I think you said you're in 50 countries now? Over
Yeah,
50 countries? Okay.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um,
And Canada is one of them. I know you got a big audience in Canada, obviously
Hmm.
US, Australia, New Zealand, most of Europe. And so we're in a lot of places in that regard. Um, we also were going to provide for your audience an offer, special offer, just for allowing us to be on
wonderful.
here. I know you had Bill on here and just allowing us to communicate today. And so in your show notes, everybody, please look at the show notes. You'll see a link, and that link will give you a really significant discount on our products. And with that, you can get on our subscription program at its lowest uh, available price. And if you decide you don't want it, you didn't like it, you can get your money back. If you want off the subscriptions, we make life easy, right? That's where our reputation comes from, as being a consumer-friendly organization. When you're on the website, there's a chat bar. And so if you want to follow up on something I've said or Bill or one of our other representatives said, use that chat bar. They probably already have the answers, but if they don't, they will get back to you and help you work through whatever your questions or concerns might be. And so follow that link. We hope you do, since it's all guaranteed. You have absolutely nothing to lose and, maybe everything to gain.
Great.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much, Eddie.
Thank
Final
you.
words, Peter?
I'm in awe of what these products are, having done a lot of reading about them and looked at a lot of testimonials and seen the results that people have been getting. And of course, I keep going back to Dr. Bill Andrews running marathons at the age of 71. I'm a little older than him. I haven't run a marathon for a long time, but I still walk every morning. And when I heard him, I said to my good lady, well, there's another man. I'm going to run another marathon. She says, don't you dare. But it's amazing. He's a real testimonial for the product. So thank you.
Right. Well, thank you. It's been absolute pleasure having you on the show today, Eddie. Thank you so
Thank you.
much for being here. And once again, thank you all so very much for tuning in. And until next time, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.